Caring for Oriental Lilies 101. Hey everybody, I'm designer Frank Blanchard, AIFD, and welcome to EC Flowers and More. We are in the process of creating a series of videos for our EC Flowers and More YouTube channel, specifically on the topic of care and handling. Now, if you have never experienced getting flowers farm direct, in other words, the flowers that you're purchasing are coming direct from the farm, direct to your door, the process of handling them and processing your flowers is slightly different than when you are going to your floral wholesaler or local flower market. Now, for lilies, it's really important to make sure to hydrate them as best you can so that you get maximum base life, but to also help ensure that they open and show themselves off to their full potential. Now, in the first video in this short series that we've created, we talk about getting your flowers to wake up once your flowers have arrived at your door and you finally open the boxes. And that video talks all about what to do with those flowers first. So these lilies have already gone through that process. So now I'm going to go through the final step to process and get them as fully hydrated as I can possibly get them. Now, this is a newer variety of Oriental lily. It's one of the rose lilies, or rosa lily, depending on how you refer to them. And they are the newer varieties of Orientals that are fully double, meaning they have many, many, many more petals than the traditional lily form that we've been used to for so long. Now, obviously we can still get those lilies, but this rose lily form is newer on the market. It's been around for a little while. Maybe you've seen them, maybe you haven't, but either way, you're still gonna treat them the same. Now, this particular bunch of lilies, you notice I still have the plastic sleeve on. Now, when you are treating your lilies at that stage of getting your farm direct flowers to wake up after shipping and being on a very cold flight on their way to you, if you do the first step of waking them up and starting the hydration process by leaving them in the plastic sleeve, that really helps hold the flowers upright so they aren't sprawled all over the place, and will allow them to drink more fully, and the stems will get a lot more turgid and firm up for you. Because during the time that your flowers go to sleep during shipping, especially the lilies and especially the Oriental lilies, their stems and their leaves get really weak and flimsy sometimes. So do the first step of getting them to wake up, and that way when you do finish the processing, which I'm going to do now, they're going to hold up for you a whole lot better, and the hydration process will just go that much better for the flowers. So I'm going to be putting these in this clear vase so that these flowers can be displayed nicely in a shop space. It could just as easily be a bucket. Either way, you always want to make sure for all of your flowers that your vases, display vases, buckets, all of those different containers that you've got are really clean. They need to be clean to the point of being sterile. Now, there are commercial products on the market that you can get to help clean your buckets and make sure that there's no bacteria growth in them. If you run out of that, or you don't have any of that, or you've never used it and you find it you don't necessarily need to, another option for you, which you very likely do, is just to use a little bleach along with a slight bit of soap if your buckets are really scrungy. But the main thing is just a small amount of bleach, and make sure that you're getting all of your vases really clean. So now for this bunch of lilies, now I can go ahead and take the plastic sleeve off the bunch. Now they're still bundled, but because I did do the first process of getting the flowers to wake up prior to the stage I'm at now, these have really firmed up nicely. And this is a really solid bunch of rose lily, and it's a white one, and the variety is Angela. And so from there, I'm just taking the bands off of the stems, and I'm gonna start by handling each stem individually, and I'm going to get rid of the vast majority of all of the larger leaves. On this particular one, you can see I'm kind of leaving one small leaf on each bract, but that's it, because I really want to make sure that where the water is going is to the blooms and not the leaves. So that's the first step. And lilies, this you can get through pretty quick. You're just getting rid of the excess foliage, because you don't want any of it getting down into the water at all. And it gives you a chance to really inspect each stem and make sure that they're in good condition. And I do that to all the blooms individually, all at once, and then I'm gonna cut the entire bunch all at once in one motion and immediately into the water. Now, talking about water in the container, you want to make sure that for lilies and oriental lilies, that the water is a bit on the warm side. That will help them draw more moisture, and more moisture will get up to the blooms, and they will open more fully, because when they do open, you want to make sure that the blooms are actually turgid enough with moisture that they hold themselves up. I'm sure you've experienced roses that, or I should say lilies, that are completely open and they just sort of look like a wet piece of Kleenex, and they're really limp looking. And that's because they haven't gotten quite enough water all the way up to each individual bloom head. So if you do get lilies like that, you might try taking them out of the container or the arrangement they're in, and you can recut them and try to rehydrate them. You might be able to bring them back to life. So that's something to consider. So for starters, with the water again, I've got water that's slightly on the warm side. Not quite dishwater hot, but it's definitely warm. And I also have a good quality floral preservative in this water. Now that I've got all of these in here, or bundled up, and all the excess foliage cleaned off, I'm gonna take the whole bunch, and I'm gonna be cutting this bunch down a bit, because at the moment, I don't need all the stem length. If I was working on an event where I needed my lilies to be really long because I needed the stem length to get arrangements that were large enough for the situation, obviously I would leave the stems longer. But in this case, I'm gonna cut them down a bit, not a whole lot, but some, and I'm gonna cut them at a really sharp angle with my clean design knife. Really sharp blade, that way I can get a good, clean, sharp angled cut on each stem, and I'm gonna do the whole stem at once in one motion and immediately into the base. That way, they're gonna be able to hydrate that much faster. When you cut the stems at an angle, you are exposing the maximum surface area of each stem that draws the water up to the top of the stem to the water. So you're gonna get much better vase life if you get an angled cut on all of those flowers and not just a blunt, straight across cut. If you are in the process of hydrating lilies and you've got them for a specific event that you've got coming up, you need to think ahead about how long it's gonna take to get them open and really be able to show themselves off to their full potential so that they really make a splash for your event that you're doing. Because you don't want to send out an arrangement that's nothing but lily buds, because it doesn't look like much of anything. So there are a few tricks to doing that. One, making sure that the water that you put them in first when you're doing your care and handling of them needs to be slightly warm, and you need to be using a good quality floral preservative. From there, don't immediately put them in the cooler. Make sure that you leave them out for a while, at least a few hours, to hydrate before putting them in the cooler. Now, if you are doing an event and you need those lilies to be completely open, or as much as you can possibly get them to be open, you might actually need to think about receiving those lilies the week prior to the week the event is actually happening, because it can take some babying of your lilies and staging them, bringing them out of the cooler, leaving them out of the cooler during the day while you're working. That warmer air is going to help them open up back into the cooler at night. That can take several days to get the maximum result. Now, sometimes, depending on when the lilies were harvested, and by that I mean what stage of development they were harvested, sometimes it can be a little harder to get them to open. One trick that can help speed up the process is if you have some pollen sacs from some other lilies that are already open, either old lilies that you've had, or it could be new lilies that are already cracked that you can get to the pollen sacs. Everybody knows we need to get rid of those pollen sacs so that the blooms that we're working with don't get stained. However, if you take those same pollen sacs and drop them into your bucket or vase of water, those pollen sacs actually contain an enzyme that will help those lilies open a little faster. So if you're having some lilies and having issues with getting them to open and open fast enough for you, especially if maybe you've had them for a little while and they still aren't opening, try taking some of the pollen sacs from some other lilies that you've got and drop them into the water. That enzyme in there will disperse through the water and will help them open that much faster for you. So hopefully that answers some questions for you on good, proper care and handling of your farm direct lilies from EC Flowers and More. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so that you get notifications every time we upload a new video. I'm going to be doing a lot of new videos for EC Flowers and More that will be giving you design inspiration. We'll be introducing you to new varieties of flowers as they come on the market, and lots more videos specifically regarding care and handling of your farm direct flowers. So until next time, I'm designer Frank Blanchard, AIFD, and we will see you very soon. Bye-bye.